Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Tomorrow's Romance Dawn, Old Version, by OtakuWithHazelEyes. The Straw Hats have left Drum, ready to take on Baroque works in Alabasta. However, upon making a pit stop at a mystery island, they come across something they never expected to find: an older Zoro. Now they must locate the future crew, as well as keep treasure out of the hands of bounty hunters. Adios.
Siobhan refused to look at him. If she had to look at Vaughn 1 minute more, she was going to scream. "Come on," he was saying while smiling. Not that she could tell. She wasn't looking at him, deviously. "I know you heard it too." Nope. She wasn't going to look. She was going to sit in her cage and keep facing the wall of the tent, which was made of 1,000-count thread sheets. Sissies, she would not take his bait. It was an interesting sound, Vaughn went on, leaning back in his chair. The sound of all those voices falling silent. "I can't help but wonder if something happened to the men we left on the ship." "Well, didn't he sound choked up about that?" "Please." Vaughn said it as if he were discussing whether or not it would rain that day. And what really pushed her buttons was that he was right. She had heard the sound of voices falling silent. Hearing such things was difficult on Kala, but she had had a long time overcome that obstacle. She was impressed he'd been able to overcome it so quickly. Not that she's ever admitted. Vaughn clearly didn't need a bigger ego. Vaughn had been chattier ever since the Den Den Mushi call from Arati. Speaking of which, the call itself had been bugging her. "Why do you agree?" she said at last, turning her head to look at him. "She speaks," Vaughn joked before becoming serious. "However, I'll need you to clarify your question." "I remember when you left Moss Hair in the woods," she continued. "You said his crew was of low priority. Why are you now so eager to hunt them down?" The red-eyed hunter shrugged. "A man has his reasons. Maybe I'm just itching for a fight. Or maybe you just want these Straw Hats to get involved." "Involved? With what?" "You know what?" Siobhan spat. She stood up and gripped the bars of her cage. "Boss is trying to find Kala's treasure, and you want those pirates to get involved. Why?" "I thought you'd want them to get involved too. You said that the others that were coming would stop us." "I know, and I still think that. That doesn't change that I want to know why you're so adamant about them getting involved that you're helping them along." Vaughn stood up and walked over to the cage, then kneeling down to Siobhan's eye level. "This is the Straw Hat Pirates we're talking about, kid," Vaughn said with a smirk. "They don't need my help to get involved with the going-ons of this island. They can do that much on their own." "You're avoiding my question, Blood Eyes. You've been refusing to answer my questions all day, Gold Eyes." Siobhan scowled. She couldn't help the way her eyes looked. Everyone in her family had them. Wow. There was a lot of hypocrisy in that thought. Vaughn's smirk grew even more smirky. "And for the record, boss, as you so insistently call him, has a name. It's Carrion. Just thought you'd like to know." She wrinkled her nose. "Carrion? Who names their child after rotting meat?" "You got me, but you have to admit, it sums up his personality quite well. Whereas the name Siobhan means, God is gracious. And there ain't anything gracious or godly about you." Instead of going on with the conversation at this point, Siobhan stuck out her tongue at him and then sat back down. Vaughn shrugged and returned to his chair. He didn't fall asleep this time, for someone was going to be coming along soon to relieve him of brat-watching duty. Arati had talked to Boss. Siobhan calling him by his actual name would imply she actually cared, on the transponder snail, and like she predicted, he had been thrilled with the plan. Vaughn was to start the hunt as soon as possible. He would leave when Runo arrived to pick up his toys. Siobhan looked to the side, where her father's staff was laid against a desk. "These fools," she thought. "They have no idea what they're getting into. I need to get out of here before these idiots do something they're going to regret." She then looked down at the palms of her hands. On a side note, why were these Straw Hat Pirates so important to Boss and his men? They were important enough that the island revealed itself to them, but still. Pirates are the freest people on the sea, Siobhan. No regrets, no responsibilities. It's only them, freedom, and the wide open sea. And they're about the most interesting people you'll ever meet. "You mean like you? Not like me, I'm one of a kind." Yeah, that didn't sound conceited at all. You're lucky I like you, kid. Freedom, Siobhan whispered so quietly, not even Vaughn could hear her. She was sure, no regrets, no responsibilities. She bet these pirates had all those things. When her friend first told her about pirates, for the first time in her life, she had felt jealous. She had responsibilities, and she currently failing at them. She had regrets, too many to count, and most important of all, she wasn't free, and she didn't mean she wasn't free of this stupid cage. Siobhan wasn't free of this island, of Kala, and she never would be. She had a promise to keep, and she'd be damned if she ever broke it. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shouting. "Oi, Vaughn!" A voice hollered from outside the tent. Runo had arrived. "Come on, time is money, and we've got a lot of it to make up for." A nameless lackey entered the tent and turned to the red-eyed man. "I'm here to relieve you, sir." Vaughn stood up and stretched his arms. "Finally. There's only so many scathing glares I can take before I get bored." That comment earned him another said scathing glare from Siobhan. Still bored, Vaughn taunted her. He picked up his weapons from where they lay against the tent, and strapped them to his back and sides. "Well, I'm off. Be a good girl for your new chaperone, alright Siobhan? Bite me, Blood Eyes. I think you do enough biting for the both of us, brat, and Carrion has the scars to prove it." Vaughn then strolled out of the tent and went out to meet up with Runo and his toys. The nameless lackey claimed Vaughn's old chair and began his vigilant watch over the girl. Siobhan frowned. Darn. As annoying as he was, Vaughn had been her only source of intelligent conversation since they stuck her in the cage, which she still thought was totally unnecessary. Ropes or chains or even a leash would work just as well, whoever this straw hat guy was. He'd better be appreciating the attention. She was going to be bored out of her skull until either he got caught or got involved in this whole mess. Stupid straw hat. "Geez, what took you so long?" Runo said as Vaughn exited the tent. He spun a flintlock pistol on his index finger. "Was guarding the brat so entertaining that you couldn't be dragged away?" "Shut up, Runo," Vaughn said, barely paying the other man any mind. "I was just wrapping up my chat with the prisoner. And don't spin that thing on your finger, you'll make it misfire." Sure enough, the pistol went off and from somewhere off to the side they heard a cry of pain. Runo winced, then stuffed the gun in his pocket and tried to look as innocent as possible. It wasn't working. Vaughn sighed. "See what I mean? Anyway, where are your toys? I thought you came here to get them." Runo shrugged and put his arms behind his head. "I gave them their orders and sent them on ahead." "Was that wise? What if they come out from under their trances because you're not there? Do you have any idea how my powers work? They can only come out of a trance either by my saying so or somebody somehow figuring out the release phrase I put in place. Or if they get clocked on the right temple, but what are the odds of that? I'd say 50-50, you're just as likely to hit the left as the right." "That was rhetorical, stupid. Pot and kettle, Runo," Vaughn said with a shrug. "Why the right though?" "Nobody ever aims for the right temple," Runo replied matter-of-factually. "Ah." Runo grinned and threw his arms up into the air. "Now, enough dilly-dallying, we got hunting to do." "You go on ahead," Vaughn said, waving him off. "I'll be right behind you. I just have some housekeeping to-skeeping." "You just shot a guy, remember? Oh yeah. Do you have to say that so nonchalantly?" Runo snickered creepily, as usual, as if the idea of accidentally shooting people was fun, before running on ahead back into the forest. Vaughn rolled his eyes and strolled in the direction the earlier cry of pain had come from. The victim was lying on the ground next to the medical tent, luckily, and had ironically been one of their snipers. Runo did love irony. "Vaughn!" One of the men shouted when Vaughn got close. "Brady has been shot, are we under attack?" "No, Runo just had a mishap with his gun," Vaughn replied. "What are you waiting for? An invitation? The medical tent's right there, so bring Brady in." The subordinate saluted and dragged Brady into the tent, leaving behind a trail and pool of blood. There was actually quite a bit of it. The bullet must have went in close to an artery or something. Well, there was no use in letting it all go to waste. Vaughn took out a pocket knife and made a thin slice in his palm, then held his now cut hand level over the pool of blood. After a moment or two, the pool bubbled before long streams of the blood arose from it, curling and twisting towards Vaughn's palm. All the red liquid formed into a sphere the size of a marble, then absorbed into the cut. The cut scabbed over almost right away. Brady has XF blood type. Who knew? Vaughn muttered absently to himself. Vaughn stretched his arms. Now that housekeeping was taken care, he could follow after Runo. Kala was by no means a very big island, but it was still a lot of ground to cover. The rest of the Straw Hats could be anywhere, and they still hadn't procured the treasure Carrion was so obsessed with. Vaughn frowned and reached into his pocket, removing a medallion. It was a large gold circle attached to a long ribbon. Nothing fancy. He carefully slipped the medallion over his head and let the gold fall against his chest. It was his lucky medallion, and if everything was to go as planned, he needed all the luck he could get. Vaughn turned and ran into the jungle. Runo had been right for once, they had hunting to do. Location: wreck of the bounty hunter's ship, beach of Kala. Remember when it was stated that if asked, the Straw Hats would agree that the previous night's dinner for lunch was the most awkward atmosphere they had ever collectively been in? Scratch that. This was now most definitely the awkwardest atmosphere they had ever collectively been in. Roronoa had decided that bringing the talking skeleton, whose name was Brooke, apparently, over to the rest of crew was a good idea, despite the fact said crew was terrified of said talking skeleton. Well, except Luffy. If the expression of sheer awe and the mischievous grin on his face were any indications, he was currently having the best day of his life. Brooke, naturally, was focusing more on the fact there were 2 Zoros before him than the rest of the crew, much to their relief. If he said anything to them, they wouldn't know what to say back. He was a living skeleton, for the love Mike. How was that even possible? And to greater extent, what crack were their future selves on when they allowed him to join their crew? Speaking of which, Brooke had been staring at Zoro for a solid 5 minutes now. It was starting to aggravate the latter. You can stare for the next decade for all I care, 'cause what you're seeing isn't going to change, Zoro growled at last. Roronoa crossed his arms and said to the skeleton, "Well, anything to say?" Brooke turned to look at the older swordsman. "So, Zoro-san, when were you going to tell us you had a younger brother?" "We're not brothers," the 2 swordsmen hollered, both pounding him on the skull. "Get it right, damn skeleton." Brooke laughed as he fell to the ground. "Yo-ho-ho-ho, so harsh," he stood up almost immediately. "But if this other man is not your brother, then who exactly is he?" "We should be asking the same thing," Usopp yelled from where he was hiding behind Karoo. He paused. "Not about the brother thing, but who the heck you are. And how the heck a skeleton is walking and talking anyhow," Sanji added angrily, though he was hanging back with Nami. Brooke looked confused, or about as confused a guy without a face can look. "Hey, skeleton guy," Luffy announced suddenly, "join my crew." "No way." Everyone scolded him. "He's already part of your crew," Roronoa pointed out. She, oh yeah, I forgot," Luffy laughed. Everyone else groaned. Luffy didn't see what was so wrong about the skeleton guy. He was so amazing, and not just because he was a walking, talking Afro skeleton. Didn't they see how he cut down all those bounty hunters? Yeah, he'd wanted to be the one to fight them, but he hadn't seen Brooke ever draw his sword, and the thing with ice was pretty awesome. Luffy could tell by the way Zoro kept glancing back at the skeleton's cane sword that he was trying to figure out how he did it. "Am I missing something here, Zoro-san?" Brooke asked. "Everyone is acting very strange, I can't wrap my brain around it. Although as a skeleton, my brain has long since rotted away." Yo-ho-ho-ho, skull joke. She, skull joke, Luffy echoed. Roronoa rolled his eye. "That's why I said you had a lot to catch up on. To make a long story short." Roronoa quickly went on to describe what had happened after he and Brooke were separated. This included waking up on the Mary and everything he and the past Straw Hats managed to deduce so far. This meant the whole issue with time, Zoro being Roronoa's younger self, and the bounty hunter threat. So on top of the fact we're being hunted by bounty hunters and something has happened to Nami-san, what you're saying is that somehow a past version of our crew arrived on this island not long after we did. And they were in the first half in the Grand Line when they did so, Brooke summarized. More or less, Roronoa shrugged. And when I say past, it's way in the past. To them. Chopper only joined the crew a couple of days ago. Alright then. That was a total underreaction. Yo-ho-ho-ho, not really, Zoro-san. I too have noticed the abnormal sunrises and sunsets, so I'm pretty much used to them. But as whole, our crew gets into strange occurrences almost on a daily basis. At this point, nothing phases me. Roronoa frowned skeptically. What about when we met Aokiji in the bathhouse? Alright, almost nothing phases me, Brook corrected himself. He turned to face the younger crew. In any case, this does explain why Usopp-san ran from me in the jungle, and why none of you recognize me. I know all of you, but this the first time any of you are meeting me. You know who I am? Vivi asked nervously. No, but I can guess. If I recall from what I've read in Nami-san's logbook, Chopper-san came aboard before the crew arrived in the Sand Kingdom of Alabasta. If that's the case, then the lovely blue-haired young lady before me must be none other than Princess Nefertari Vivi. Vivi allowed herself a small smile at the compliment. That's right. Brook laughed and clapped a bony hand on Roronoa's shoulder. Yo-ho-ho-ho, our crew seems to befriend many princesses, don't we? Roronoa raised an eyebrow. What, counting Vivi, we only know, like, 2 princesses. The second we met not even a week ago. Shirahoshi-san was truly a beautiful sight, even for my old eyes. Oh, but I don't have eyes, yo-ho-ho-ho. Mr. Brook. Chopper piped up from where he was hiding the wrong way behind Luffy. If you don't have eyes, how can you see? The same way I hear, Chopper-san. Chopper just became more confused. That doesn't explain anything, Nami shouted, and you still haven't introduced yourself. Oh, of course. My apologies. Brook removed his hat and bowed. My name is Dead Bones, Brook, swordsman and musician of the Straw Hat Pirates. A pleasure to meet you all once again. Luffy's eyes widened to comical proportions. You're my musician? Indeed, Luffy-san, awesome. I finally have a musician. Luffy, the crew's eyes widened as well. You mean, we actually found a member of the living undead who was musician? Usopp began. And actually took him into consideration? Nami finished. Sanji turned to glare at Zoro. I blame you for this. Hey, Zoro protested. Actually, you and Nami-san were the ones with Luffy-san when he initially tried to recruit me, Sanji-san, Brook explained. So if anything, any blame to give is all on you, Roronoa added. Sanji couldn't help but think Roronoa didn't have to sound so darn smug when he said that. My musician is a talking afro skeleton. This is officially the best day ever. Luffy went gleefully. Hey Brook, do you poop? Sanji and Nami whacked their captain in the head. Don't ask him that. As a matter of fact, I do, the skeleton replied. Now it was Brook's turn to be whacked, and don't you answer him. For the second time that day, Brook went crashing into the pink sand. He didn't seem particularly bothered by it though. He just continued to laugh, and the crew couldn't help but like that laugh. It was just so happy. Yo-ho-ho-ho. How nostalgic. This reminds me of the day I first met Luffy-san. He stood up once again and bent over Nami. Pardon me, Nami-san. Nami flinched slightly. Yes? May I see your panties? Never, creep. Make that 3 times. Brook landed in the sand that day. This time courtesy of Nami performing a kick even Sanji had to admit was impressive. You kicked beautifully, Nami Swan, Sanji praised. Shut up, Sanji. Yes, Nami my love, Usopp's sweat dropped. This is also like the day I met Luffy-san, Brook exclaimed from his spot on the ground. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Nami had to be held back by Vivi at this point, for the navigator was ranting about breaking every bone she could see before her. Vivi, who had already been asked that question, only sighed and kept her friend from killing Roronoa's comrade. Though technically, he was already dead. Could you kill someone twice? I don't get it, Chopper said. Why does Brook want to see their underwear so badly? Usopp patted his head. We'll tell you when you're older. Chopper scowled. He wasn't a little kid. They didn't have to keep treating him like one. He was a man and a pirate. Guys, stop hitting my musician, Luffy shouted. I just got him and I don't want him broken. Is he your musician or your toy? Vivi asked with a sweat drop. Nami finally calmed down and just settled for crossing her arms. Quow, Karoo agreed. Roronoa rolled his eye again, then helped Brook stand. If Brook's had enough of eating sand, could you excuse us for a second? I need to talk him, in private. Without waiting for an answer, Roronoa dragged Brook past the fallen bounty hunters and pulled him behind a large section of the wrecked ship. Luffy and the gang stared at the direction they went in, all looking puzzled. What was that about? Sanji wondered aloud. Must be a future thing, or they would have talked in front of us, Usopp theorized. Zoro narrowed his eyes skeptically. What was his older self up to? With Brook and Roronoa. Brook, how much of the severity of the situation do you actually understand? Roronoa asked once they were out of sight. Enough to know we've really dug a deep hole for ourselves this time, Brook replied, leaning on his cane. What possessed you to bring them along? Luffy sounds strong, but if they're from as far in the past as you say, they're not ready for a stage like this yet. New World bounty hunters and Paradise rookies are not a good combination no matter how you look at it. You think I don't know that? They're not ready, Zoro-san. If we can't get them to leave, it's going to be Sabaody. I know, Zoro snapped. He calmed right away. I know. I tried to get them to back off, but… He sighed, looking sheepish. Luffy made it a captain's order that I let them help. Brook understood immediately. Captain's orders were absolute, a fact Roronoa took very, very seriously. Ah, I see, the skeleton said softly. Loyal to a fault as always, Zoro-san. Roronoa shot him a glare, like you're one to talk. Brook laughed and Roronoa let himself smile. They all really were too loyal. That much hasn't changed about Luffy over the years, at least, Roronoa said somewhat fondly. If Luffy wants something badly enough, he does everything in his power to get his way. And this time he wanted to help me find our crew. At his mention of this, Brook glanced around the wreckage, looking at Luffy. Roronoa looked with him. Luffy was currently riding on Karoo while chasing Chopper in circles around the beach. He must have gotten bored again. As far as they could see, Luffy was laughing and having the time of his life. He looked so happy and carefree. Luffy-san looks very different, Brook observed, speaking slowly. You noticed too, huh? Roronoa said as he crossed his arms. Yes, you can see it in his eyes, they're lighter. Roronoa glanced down. Yeah, they are. Zoro-san, what if we… No, you don't even know what I was going to say. I do know, and I'm telling you now, we're also under Captain's orders not to reveal anything substantial about the future. Roronoa gave the skeleton a stern look. Anything, no matter how much we might want to. But if we warned Luffy-san about, Brook continued. Even if we did warn him, there's no guarantee it would change anything, Roronoa interrupted. And even if it did change something, there's no guarantee it would be for the better. But, Brook, I'm going to be saying the same thing to the others when we find them, so listen carefully. There are just some things you shouldn't mess with, no matter what good intentions you may have. Besides, do you really want to be one to tell Luffy about that? Brook didn't reply. That's what I thought. Roronoa placed a hand on Brook's bony shoulder. I understand where you're coming from, but for now, ignorance is best for those guys. Understand? Brook sighed, but nodded. I understand, Zoro-san. I will not say anything about the future, for Luffy-san's sake if nothing else. The green-haired swordsman nodded as well, satisfied. Good. Oh, and one more thing. To keep from getting the two of us confused, everyone else has been calling me by my surname. You should probably do the same. Roronoa-san it is, then, the musician agreed, regaining his previous cheerfulness. Now, shall we rejoin the others? They're most likely starting to wonder what's taking us so long, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're frustrated that they can't hear us from way other there. My ears would be strained as well if it were me. Not that I have ears. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Back with Luffy and the crew. What's taking them so long? Nami grumbled, tapping her foot. We're on a schedule. They've only been over there for 5 minutes, Vivi pointed out. She was sitting in the sand playing tic-tac-toe with Usopp and Sanji. Usopp drew a line through 3 O's. Huh? I win. No way, you cheated, Sanji argued. I didn't cheat. It's tic-tac-toe, it's impossible to cheat. You found a way. Shut up, Nami barked. She turned to glare at Luffy, who was still chasing Chopper around a Karoo. And Luffy, leave poor Chopper alone. He's not here to relieve your boredom. Luffy pouted, but listened and dismounted Karoo. Chopper gratefully fell onto his back, exhausted. Roronoa was the one who wanted to get searching so badly, Zoro added. He was lying against a big rock. And now he's holding us up. What an annoyance. Mr. Bushido? Vivi asked. You do realize that you're talking about yourself, right? I know, Zoro admitted. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Tell me about it, Sanji agreed. Roronoa's twice the jerk our mosshead is. I just curb stomped him, lousy sword freak. You're still mad he threw you into the mast? Chopper asked. He didn't throw me, Sanji shouted. He caught me off balance, that's all. Keep telling yourself that, love cook, Zoro snickered. If there was one thing he liked about his older counterpart, ITED the cook quite nicely. Shut your trap, mosshead. I'm not in the mood. Who are you calling mosshead, arrow cook? That does it. Nami groaned as Zoro and Sanji began another fight, resting her forehead on Vivi's, who'd stood up just for this purpose, shoulder. They're never going to grow out of this, are they? Vivi patted her head. Given how Mr. Roronoa keeps trying to bait Sanji, I'm going to say no. Nami only groaned again. Luffy walked ahead of the crew and called out, Oi, Zoro-osan, Brook. You guys done talking yet? We're getting bored over here. One more second. They heard Roronoa call back. Luffy nodded. Yosh. That skeleton can just stay over there, Usopp muttered. I'm still not completely sold on the idea of him. Has everyone forgotten he scared the living daylights out of me and Vivi back in the woods? To be fair, now that I think about it, he didn't really do anything to scare us, Vivi interjected somewhat hesitantly. Well, except for that inappropriate question. Other than that, all he did was talk to us and we freaked out. Usopp considered that. Now that he thought about it as well, the princess was correct. Brook didn't do anything to try and frighten them. He merely greeted them and they panicked. Brook himself had admitted he didn't understand why Usopp had ran. He actually felt a little bad about how he had reacted, but not too bad though. Deliberate or not, he was a flipping skeleton for crying out loud. Some warning would have been nice. Well, Luffy, despite being an Afro-zombie monster, he did take out all those bounty hunters for us. What do you think? Zoro asked. His and Sanji's scuffle had ended in yet another tie. Luffy crossed his arms. If Brook is one of our Nakama, then that's that. Who cares if he looks kind of scary? There are loads of monsters on this crew already, so what's one more? Besides, he's cool. Watch who you're calling a monster, crappy rubberhead, Sanji scolded. You are a monster, Usopp pointed out. I was talking about Vivi-chan and Nami Swan. I don't know about Vivi, but Nami, Zoro trailed off. Sanji kicked the swordsman in the ribs and then began yet another scuffle, 2 in 5 minutes. That was a new record. Everyone else decided to just ignore them for the time being until they finished. Being a monster is okay on this crew, isn't it? Chopper asked timidly, standing up. Luffy grinned at him. She, of course. Especially Afro-zombie and 7 transformation reindeer doctor monsters. If Luffy's any indication, anyway, Nami sighed. Chopper giggled and Vivi patted him on the head. Hearing such words warms my heart, Luffy-san. Not that I have heart. Yo-ho-ho-ho. The crew turned to see Roronoa and Brook now standing right next to them, both looking mildly amused. The crew members who had been sitting down jumped to their feet, and Zoro and Sanji stopped their duel. How long have you two been standing there? Vivi asked. Just got here, Roronoa replied. I'm done talking to Brook, so we can move on. Roronoa-san tells me you're all looking for the ship so we can find Frankie-san, Brook said. I've held you up long enough, so let's be on our way. When Brook mentioned the ship, Usopp gained a glum expression. Vivi rested her hand comfortingly on his shoulder. Just hold on, Brook, Nami said. Before we continue, are you sure there isn't anything you've discovered about this place you can tell us? Like where the rest of your crew may be? Or whether you've seen a little girl who knows about this place around somewhere? Brook placed his bony hand where his chin would have been. Aside from Frankie-san, I'm afraid I haven't a clue as to where to find the rest of my Nakama. But what's this about a little girl? Zoro-osan said he met a weird kid in the jungle who knew about the time stuff on the island. Luffy replied. We figure if we find her, she could tell us something about this place. Brook tilted his head. Zoro-osan, he means me, Roronoa clarified. Brook stared at Roronoa for a moment, then burst into peals of uncontrollable laughter. He even fell to his knees and beat the ground with his fist. Shut up, it's not that funny, Roronoa yelled. That made Brooke laugh even harder. I said it's not funny. Oh yes it is, yo ho 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 ho. If anyone should be called an old man, it should be you. You're the one who's in his 90s. Yo ho 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 ho. But I'm an immortal skeleton, you have no excuse, yo ho 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 ho. Roronoa drew his white sword, looking seriously ready to use it on the laughing musician. Zoro found that little odd though. He uses his black one when he goes for one sword style, Zoro thought. Why not on Brooke? That's enough, Nami said, getting between the two. Brooke, get up and answer my question. Roronoa resheathed his sword reluctantly, but did not make another attempt to kill the skeleton. Brooke took a few calming breaths, despite not having lungs, and got back on his feet. I apologize, Nami-san. Anyway, as I said, I'm afraid I don't have any new information for you. I'm just as much in the dark about this island as you. However, when you all mentioned this island as time-challenged, it sounded familiar to me. Familiar? Usopp asked skeptically. How so? You see, I hail from the West Blue, and in the West Blue, children are often told a fairy tale about an island lost in the waves of time, Brooke explained. The tale of the island of Kala. It's quite popular in that sea. Kala? Vivi repeated. Our boss is gonna promote us for bringing in the infamous Straw Hat Pirates along with the treasure of Kala? Vivi gasped. That's what the tattooed bounty hunter said. Everyone turned to look at her. Remember? She prompted. Mr. Brooke, you weren't here, but one of the bounty hunters said he was going to be promoted for turning in the Straw Hat Pirates and the treasure of Kala. I thought it might be a name, but he was actually referring to the island. I thought it sounded familiar as well, and now I remember. I've heard the story too. This island must be Kala. But Brooke just said that island was a fairy tale, Usopp said. So are millennial dragons, and devil fruits are considered myths in the Four Blues, Sanji pointed out. Oh, good point. It's been many years since I heard the story, but I do recall it said there was a treasure hidden somewhere on the island, Brooke said helpfully. I've read that as well, Vivi added, but I don't remember much of the story either. There's treasure here, Luffy asked. What kind of treasure? I hope it's meat. Meat's not treasure, you moron, Nami said. Her eyes became berry signs. I bets it's gold and jewels from all eras of history. We're on a time island, so it makes sense. Gold and jewels? Neato, Chopper said. Are we going to look for it? I heard pirates try to find treasure all the time. Of course we're going to look for it, Nami declared. We're not looking for it, Roronoa countered. You came along because Luffy ordered me to let you aid in searching for my crew. If you want to go on a treasure hunt, do it on your own time. Nami frowned, feeling a bit guilty. Roronoa was probably worried about his crew, and she knew he was. Even if he tried to hide under all that machismo. He was an older Zoro, and she'd wanted to go off to find a treasure that might not even be on the island. Curse my generous heart, she thought. I'll just have to add on to Zoro's debt to compensate. And at that moment, Zoro gained the sudden urge to wring that money-grubbing witch's neck. He didn't know why though. Sorry Nami, we promised Zoro-san we'd help him first. The treasure that might or might not be meat is gonna have to wait, Luffy said, patting Roronoa's back. He paused. Hey, Vivi said these bounty hunters were looking for the treasure too, right? Why are bounty hunters hunting treasure? Shouldn't they be hunting bounties? They were coming after our ship originally, Brooke pointed out. I doubt they were expecting Kala to appear out of nowhere like it did. And if the point of driving us to it, Roronoa added. Hold on, Sanji interrupted. We're getting ahead of ourselves. As much as I trust Vivi's judgment, we don't even know for sure if this island's actually Kala. The group realized that was a fair point. Just because this place reminded Brooke of fairy tale didn't mean this was really the place. And only Vivi had heard the bounty hunter supposedly say Kala. We don't know, Sanji repeated. He glanced at the fallen bounty hunters, smiling around the cigarette in his mouth. But I do know how we can find out. The last thing Tattoos remembered was hearing the skeleton say he and his men had already been defeated. Then he'd felt bitterly cold and everything went black. The blackness had lasted a long time, until he felt someone shaking his shoulder with what felt like a foot. Wakey wakey, Crappy Hunter. We need to talk. Tattoos opened his eyes when the voice spoke, only to wish he hadn't. He was surrounded by Straw Hat Pirates. and none of them looked happy to see him. He tried to stand, but the fact he was still half frozen with ice made that a little difficult. He settled for sitting up as straight as he could. "What do you guys want?" he growled. "Can't you leave a guy to die in peace?" "Stop whining," Black Leg said. "According to Brook, he wasn't even trying to kill you." Luffy-san doesn't approve of lethal force when it isn't necessary, Soul King explained further. "I don't," Straw Hat asked. "Wow, my future self must be a pretty decent guy." Straw Hat was ignored. "However, if you don't answer our questions, your survival can easily be rectified, Pirate Hunter," the younger one said sinisterly, partially drawing one of his swords. "We're not actually gonna kill him, are we?" the pet asked worriedly in a whisper. "Wait, the pet could talk?" Sniper King shushed him. "Shush, you're gonna give away our bluff?" Tattoos raised an eyebrow. They did realize he could hear every word they were saying, right? He'd heard rumors that the Straw Hats, while dangerous as hell, were not a very bright bunch. It seemed those rumors were true, at least for some of the crew. "Just ask your questions," Tattoos sighed. "I don't even care anymore." "That was easy," Cat Burglar commented. "Too easy. How do we know he's not going to lie?" "He's surrounded by pissed-off pirates, including the two guys who fought him," Pirate Hunter, the older one, stated in deadpan. "For some reason, I think he's smart enough not to be stupid and lie." Tattoos growled more deeply. "Ask your damn questions already so I can lay here and wait to die." "Don't be so eager to die," the blue-haired girl said. "Here's our first question. Is this truly the island of Kala, like the one in the West Blue fairy tale?" "It is, unless that brat the higher-ups caught is lying," Tattoos replied. "I wouldn't put it past her. According to the reports I've received, she's bitten the boss 5 times and still refuses to give any substantial information." The pirates all glanced at each other. "Sounds like Roronoa's mystery kid has been captured," Blackleg muttered to his crew. "We'll worry about that later," Sniper King muttered back. "Hey, you said you were looking for our ship before," Straw Hat broke in. "Why were you looking for it? What did the Going Merry ever do to you?" "Luffy, I think it wasn't the ship he wanted, but the pirates who owned it," the blue-haired girl said. "Good, cause Mary's a great ship and you'd better leave her alone," Straw Hat threatened. "You bet she is," Sniper King agreed with a hearty fist pump. "Your blue-haired friend is right," Tattoos replied. "We were told to patrol for your ship, in the hope we'd find the rest of your crew." "The rest of our crew?" the raccoon dog echoed. "You mean you've encountered more of us?" Soul King shouted. "Not me personally, but Miss Arati did say they were having issues with a sniper. Something about a damn coward and damn flytraps." The elder pirate hunter turned to Soul King with a grin. "A coward and flytraps?" Soul King nodded. "Yo-ho-ho-ho. Sounds like Usopp-san has been keeping busy." Sniper King's eyes widened but he didn't say anything. Tattoos couldn't help but wonder how many snipers the crew had. Maybe this Usopp guy was Sniper King's sidekick or something. "Last question," Cat Burglar said in a sickeningly sweet tone. "The story says the island has some kind of treasure. What is that treasure, and why are a group of bounty hunters looking for it?" "Nami," Luffy said we weren't going to look for the treasure, the pet scolded her. Tattoos didn't hear the pet's scolding though. His mind was still stuck on the girl's question. Treasure. There was something he had to remember about the treasure. "You listening? Good. The treasure. Kala's treasure was. Carrion wants our extracurricular activities on the down low, so he asked me to do this." "What did Boss Carrion want?" "If anyone outside of our group ever inquires about the treasure or why we want it, this is what will happen. You will begin to feel a throbbing pain in your temple. It will hurt really bad, and feel like your head is going to split open." Tattoos winced. He did have a throbbing pain in his temple. Where was some aspirin when he needed it? "But lucky you, in your pocket will be a brand new invention. It's a device that will dispense pain medicine directly into your skull. Just hold it up to your temple and press the button on the handle. It's that easy." Tattoo's hand slid into his pocket and sure enough, the device was there. He really was a lucky man. Maybe now he could get rid of this agonizing headache. The Straw Hats had been busy reprimanding Nami for her question, or in Sanji's case, defending her actions, that they didn't notice how eerily quiet Tattoos had become. That is, until he pulled out a gun. Karoo was the first one who noticed it. He began to quack loudly, hoping to catch someone's attention. Fortunately, he succeeded. "He's got a gun!" Usopp shouted with alarm. Before anyone else could react, Luffy swung, stretched his arm out and knocked his crewmates aside, stepping in front of Tattoos in preparation for taking the bullet himself. However, the bounty hunter didn't turn his gun on the pirates. He calmly lifted it up and placed the tube against his temple. "He's not," Sanji said with disbelief. "Stop him," Chopper cried out. "He's going to." Bang! Location: somewhere in the jungle of Kala. "Runo?" Von asked as he stopped running. "You okay? Why'd you stop running just now?" Runo was standing several feet behind the red-eyed man, facing the direction Von was pretty sure the beach was in. For once, Runo was not smiling creepily. In fact, he looked vaguely irritated. "I'm fine," Runo said blandly. "Why do you ask? The fact you stopped running out of nowhere. You're looking towards the beach, and now have an 'I want to punch something' expression. Drop dead, Von." Von leaned against a giant tree root. "Come on, tell me what's got your knickers in a twist." Runo shrugged. "It's nothing. One of my post-hypnotic suggestions just went off is all." "And that's a bad thing? I thought you got a sick kick out of your powers being used to make people's lives miserable." "I do. This suggestion just wasn't a personal favorite." Von rolled his eyes. He had never tried to understand Runo, and he wasn't about to start now. Just as he was about to tell the feral man to get his rear in gear, a ringing came from his coat. Someone was calling him on his baby den. Ring ring ring. Ring ring clank. "This is Von," Von began. "And Runo?" Runo interrupted. "And Runo," the red-eyed man continued. "What's up?" The transponder snail's mouth moved weirdly, making strange sounds. Were those explosions? "Hello? Von." Erity's voice came out of the snail. She sounded extremely pleased with herself. "Guess what I just found?" "A purple-spotted elephant with a diamond tiara?" he guessed. "What? No, of course not. Why would you even?" JP hearing explosions in the background. "Let's just say the guy who's been a constant source of aggravation for me for the past day isn't too happy that I found his hiding spot." Erity chuckled to herself. "I'm going to enjoy this." "You found the sniper?" Runo asked eagerly. "Perfect. Save a piece for me, okay?" "Screw you, Runo. You're not the one who had drag a pair of idiots from the jaws of Venus flytraps 12 times. I'm breaking every bone in this guy's body, starting with that stupid nose," Erity said grouchily. The snail looked out of place with a snarl. "Von, make sure I don't see the two of you without some straw hats in pursuit. Am I clear?" As a church bell, Von answered. "Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work. This coward's a sneaky little holy crap. Is that a wolf or a pine tree? Gotta go." Erity hung up and the Den Mushi went back to sleep. Runo flashed Von a smirk. "You know, I think that fun you mentioned earlier is finally starting. 'Bout time." Von didn't reply. Instead he sprinted on ahead, not even caring he was leaving Runo behind to wonder what the heck had gotten into him. "It's starting, all right. Kala's secret just within my grasp," Von thought. He looked up towards the sky. The sun was coming out from behind the clouds. Better late than never, right Banu? It's been waiting for centuries, but what we've worked for is finally becoming a reality. And the Straw Hats are my ticket to attaining it. Location: beach next to the bounty hunter's wrecked ship. To say the mood took a dip after Tattoos shot himself would be an understatement. A vast understatement, in fact. The weather was still cloudy and gloomy, so it fit the blackening mood of the crew. Chopper had even started crying, Tattoos killing himself obviously bringing back bad memories. Nami had picked up the little reindeer and taken him a ways down the beach while the boys cleaned up, so to speak. Cleaning up involved going aboard the wrecked bounty hunter's ship, finding a lifeboat that wasn't too badly damaged, and putting Tattoos, the crew now partially wished they had learned the man's real name, body on it. True, they had no obligation to do anything for their former enemy, but the idea of just leaving the body there on the beach to rot didn't sit well with any of them. It ended up being a Viking funeral. Once they had walked a good distance away from the wreck and the still unconscious bounty hunter crew, they drenched the boat in gasoline, donated by Usopp, set it aflame, and set it adrift. The pirates then stood on the beach, watching the boat until it disappeared beyond the distant fog. Nami returned with Chopper in tow. Is the lifeboat gone? She asked. Yeah, Usopp replied tiredly. He was surprisingly calm for a coward who just saw a man shoot himself. Just sailed outside a couple minutes ago. He looked down at Chopper. How are you feeling, Chopper? Chopper sniffled deeply, wiping his eyes with his hoof. I'm okay. I just wasn't expecting that to happen, is all. None of them had been expecting that to happen, so Usopp could see where the reindeer was coming from. If one good thing comes out of all this, Nami said softly, I now know there seems to be a current letting away from the island, just like the one that brought us here. That's how the lifeboat got out so far so fast. So when we finally leave, we can just ride that current out of here? Sanji asked. That's the idea, but taking Roronoa's presence into account, there's no telling where or when the fog will spit us out. So basically we're stuck here until we know for sure, Zoro summarized. In a nutshell, the navigator sighed. She turned to Vivi. Sorry, Vivi. It might take even longer to get you home than before. Vivi looked at her and nodded. It's okay, Nami, really. She turned her head back towards the sea. At the moment, we have other things to worry about. You mean with what just happened? Roronoa asked. Yes, the princess replied. It makes no sense. Why would Tattoos just up and kill himself out of nowhere? He did keep telling us to just let him die, Sanji pointed out. Maybe he decided to speed up the process. No, everyone looked at their captain. His straw hat was shadowing his eyes, making them hard to see. No, Luffy repeated. Killing yourself is desperate and cowardly. Tattoos took on Zoro-san without so much as blinking. He wasn't desperate, and he sure as hell wasn't cowardly. Luffy-san is correct, Brook agreed. Take my word for it, only a man who believes he has nothing left to live for contemplates dying. He fears living with his regrets. Tattoos-san may have said to leave him there to die, but you could tell he had no regrets. He was just a sore loser. Roronoa shot Brook a side glance at his words, but said nothing. Usopp, you were the one who noticed him pulling out the gun first, Vivi said. Did you notice anything strange? Actually, it was Karoo who noticed first, Usopp admitted. Normally, he would have tried to play up his involvement to make himself look good, but he wasn't in the mood for that right now. I only looked when he started quacking his head off. Quaw! Karoo quacked, waving his wings frantically. Quaw quaw, quaw quaw quaw. Right after Nami asked her question, Tattoos got this weird look on his face, Chopper said, he says. Everyone stared at the doctor for a moment, before remembering that Chopper was technically an animal himself. Oh, yeah. You can talk to other animals, right? Nami asked. I forgot about that. Keep translating for Karoo, Tony, Vivi prompted him. Karoo went into another series of upset quacks, and Chopper translated when he finished. It was really calm, and his eyes were all glassy. They looked like Luffy's eyes when he got caught in Rice Cracker Girl's color trap, Chopper translated. Rice Cracker Girl? Sanji echoed. It was when you were goofing off back on Little Garden, Zoro said. A member of Baroque Works had the ability to hypnotize people using different colors. She got Luffy good a couple of times. Her name was Miss Silverday? Golden Week, Nami corrected. I don't care what her name is. Not like I'm sending her a get well card anytime soon. But why call her Rice Crack? Hey, wait a minute, Sanji protested. I wasn't goofing off. I was procuring that eternal pose to Alabasta. Get it right, Algae Noggin. Not the point, Roronoa interrupted before a fight could ensue. Going off Karoo's description, it sounds like Tattoos was in a trance when he pulled the trigger. You mean someone hypnotized him into killing himself? Chopper asked in horror. Can a hypnotist really do that? Luffy asked, crossing his arms. Besides Rice Cracker Girl, there was that weird guy back on Usopp's island who could do that to people. Only they got all stronger and stuff, they didn't die. Hypnotist, Luffy, Nami corrected, not hypnotist. A hypnotist is person who can transform people into hippos, Usopp lied seriously. Seriously? Luffy and Chopper gasped. Usopp just grinned in reply. Chopper and Luffy jumped around him and demanded to know more, at least until Nami knocked the latter on the head and simply told the former to calm down. Though afterwards, she gave Usopp a grateful smile. His lie broke the reindeer and the captain out of their respective funks, and helped break the gloomy mood in general, which had probably been his intention in the first place. That doesn't explain why he killed himself just then, Vivi said, placing her hand on her chin. I don't see anyone around here who could have hypnotized him unless they're hiding. They're not, Roronoa said. We're the only ones on the beach, and I don't sense anyone hiding out in the jungle. At least not nearby. If Tattoo-san's eyes became glassy right after Nami-san asked her question, as Karu-san says, Brooke added. Then if my own knowledge of hypnotism is correct, perhaps the hypnotist left behind a post-hypnotic suggestion. I've heard of those, Sanji said. That's when a hypnotist tells you to do something, but only when you hear a certain word or sound. Like hypnotizing a volunteer to cluck like a chicken every time he hears a bell ring? Nami asked. Precisely, Brooke answered. Nami-san had just asked about the island's possible treasure when the bounty hunter went into a trance, so that most likely was the trigger phrase. I guess whoever's leading the bounty hunters clearly doesn't want word about the treasure getting around, Zoro said. Hell of a way to shut up any possible leaks, though. So not only do we have the missing future crew, being unable to leave the island, Roronoa's kidnapped mystery kid, and treasure-hungry bounty hunters to worry about, but to add a cherry on top, we have to keep an eye out for a master hypnotist that can even convince people to kill themselves, Usopp sighed, sitting down in the sand wearily. What's next? Is the island going to blow up? Kaboom! The loud explosion resonated throughout the jungle, reaching the ears of the gathered pirates. They looked in the direction the sound had come from, and saw a giant cloud of pink smoke rising from the jungle in the distance. The cloud formed a distinct mushroom shape bordering on taking the form of a skull. Oh no, the island is blowing up, Chopper screamed. Sanji gave Usopp a dirty glare. You just had to jinx us, didn't you, long nose? Hey, don't blame me, Usopp hollered, standing up. I wasn't expecting an explosion to go off the… Ooh, Usopp. Maybe if you say, is food going to start raining down from the sky? Food will start raining down from the sky, Luffy suggested. Try it. Somehow I doubt that's going to work, Zoro pointed out. Try making it rain booze. Rain and alcohol are both liquids, right? Luffy, Mr. Bushido, Vivi scolded. Now's not the time. You're all being ridiculous, Nami shouted at the boys. Usopp didn't cause that explosion to go off, so stop being moronic. Actually, maybe he did. Roronoa spoke up, mostly to himself. Nami looked at the elder swordsman. I beg your pardon? Roronoa ignored her, then turned towards Brooke. You thinking what I'm thinking? Brooke nodded. Yes. Unless my eyes are deceiving me, though I have none, that smoke definitely looks like the remains of one of Usopp-san's attacks. Yeah, you're right. That's Usopp's bomb grass, or whatever it is he calls it. Roronoa agreed. He smirked. Tattoos did say they were having issues with a cowardly sniper. This made Brooke laugh loudly. Future guys. Usopp interrupted. How can you be so sure that explosion was future me just because of some smoke? Your future self uses a unique form of ammunition, Usopp-san, Brooke replied. We'd recognize it anywhere. Usopp raised an eyebrow in interest. He'd become interested in learning what kind of sniper he was in the future. Hadn't that one bounty hunter lackey who read off the wanted posters called him Sniper King? So good news. We now have at least a semblance of an idea where to find another member of Roronoa and Brooke's crew, Sanji said, lighting a fresh cigarette. Bad news. Given an explosion is our only indicator, he's most likely fighting off one of the bounty hunters as we speak. Usopp's in trouble. Luffy gasped. He turned toward the jungle. Don't worry Usopp, I'm coming. Luffy, wait Roronoa began to protest. It was too late. The rubber captain went tearing into the woods, with only the goal of protecting his nakama in mind. Location. Jungles of Kala. Roronoa shoved a vine out of his way. You know, I blame the cook for this. Huh, why's that, Roronoa? Chopper asked. If he hadn't opened his big mouth, Luffy wouldn't have taken off like that. I'm right here you know, Mosshead, Sanji barked. Roronoa ignored him. I think you're giving Luffy too much credit. Nami disagreed with the swordsman. I'm surprised he went this long without just charging into the jungle. After Luffy took his impromptu venture into the jungle, the assembled pirates agreed maybe it was time to reevaluate their original decision not to split up. One group would enter the foliage and search for their captain, and future Usopp, to a lesser extent, while the second group would continue looking for Frankie and the ship. Only this time around, the second group would return to the Going Merry and search from the water. They weren't taking any chances with another attack on the beach. With the bounty hunter's ship gone, the waters were safe, relatively anyway. Nami even gave them instructions on how to avoid the current letting away from the island. And so, not to contradict Roronoa's "no fighting without permission" condition, one future Straw Hat would be in each group. Brook would go with the Merry-bound group, after being given explicit instructions about Roronoa's condition, and Roronoa would leave with the jungle group. Roronoa actually had wanted to go into the jungle alone, but Nami reminded him he could get lost on the Merry, never mind a big jungle. Then Chopper pointed out Roronoa was still injured and his fight with the bounty hunters agitated his shoulder. And then Sanji had wanted to be on Nami's team, though that didn't mean he loved Vivi any less. But Usopp complained that her team already had Roronoa and would have Luffy next. His team needs some powerhouses too. Not that the great Captain Usopp can't handle a surprise attack, Usopp had said. In fact, I once fought off a surprise attack from an army of two-headed swordsmen when I was just 2 years old. Ignoring the ridiculous lie, Nami had argued her team was more likely to be attacked by the bounty hunters than the Merry-bound group, so they needed Sanji more, elating the chef greatly. Zoro was placed into Brook's group to compensate. In the end, the groups looked something like this. Going Merry Retrieval and Shipwright Location Team: Brook, Usopp, Zoro, Vivi, and Kuru. Luffy, eventual future Usopp, Roronoa's mystery kid if we happen to see her search and rescue team. Roronoa, Nami, Chopper, Sanji, and Luffy. When they found him and knocked his lights out for being so stupid. Once that was settled, the two groups went their separate directions. The second group was now currently deep into the jungle, attempting to locate and retrieve their impulsive captain. Which actually wasn't as hard they thought it would be. All they had to do was follow the path of destruction Luffy had created by punching through whatever got in his way. Usually bushes and the occasional giant tree root. Also Chopper was lending a hand, or hoof, by using his enhanced sense of smell. I still can't believe how big the trees here are, Chopper said with wonder. He was in Walk Point, once again playing the role of the pack mule. They're even bigger than the evergreens back on Drum. I wonder why they grow this way. Probably because of the environment, Roronoa commented. I wouldn't be surprised if this place's ecosystem differed from other islands. The reindeer nodded. It sounded like a plausible explanation. Roronoa walked a little farther ahead with Chopper, before the pair realized Sanji and Nami weren't following. Chopper stopped and turned around. Sanji? Nami? You guys coming? Roronoa asked. Sanji and Nami stared at Roronoa in disbelief. Why are you staring at me like I'm crazy? Since when do you know so much about plants? Nami asked. Don't tell me you've taken up botany, Sanji added. Roronoa rolled his eye. I don't and I haven't. I just remember Robin saying something like that a while back. I figure if it was true then, it's true now. The crew began following Luffy's trail again. Nami walked in the front of the group, occasionally jotting down in a little notebook. This Robin sounds like she's really smart, Nami said. She is, Roronoa said with a nod. She's an archaeologist. Not that I'm complaining about another gorgeous lady being on the crew, Sanji said. But what does archaeology have to do with piracy? That's a question you'd have to ask Luffy. You know, assuming we find both him and his older self. Nami frowned. Going off your description of your crew, I'm guessing Luffy hasn't outgrown running off without giving everyone else's opinions any consideration? You mean Luffy does this often? Chopper asked. Sanji gave a tired sigh. Very often. Extremely often, Roronoa added. He smirked. You guys are in for a lot of gray hairs in the coming years. That thought gave the past Straw Hats, save Chopper, a sense of dread, so they continued on in silence. Nami continued to write down notes down in her notebook, to a point where she was finally asked about it. What's that you got there, Nami? Chopper asked. I figured if we were going traipsing through the jungle anyway, I should take some notes of the topography, the navigator answered. I told the guys earlier I wanted to make a map of this place, and it looks like I'll get to do just that. Oh Nami, you're so beautiful when you're trying to accomplish your dream, Sanji cooed, hearts in his eyes. Cough cough whipped cough cough. Roronoa faked coughed into his fist. Sanji shot him a baleful glare. Mind your own business. Nobody was talking to you, Zoro-san. Your future self is 21 too, you know. Roronoa pointed out in deadpan. And last time I checked, aren't you older than me by a few months? Sanji hated it when Zoro, or this case, Roronoa, had a point. He quickly thought up a retort. But I'm not my older self. I'm still 19, thus making you the older one, and therefore Noah looked at Sanji from over his shoulder. Then maybe I should have you call me Roronoa-senpai. Not on your life, Moss, Sanji began to holler. Wait a second, Nami interrupted, ceasing her stride. Roronoa, you remember that conversation? About our ages? Yeah, he replied, also stopping. Only because it was the day we learned Arrow Cook was barely older than me. Why do you ask? The subject of our ages only came up then because we saw the island, Nami explained. Chopper gasped in realization. And Roronoa doesn't remember ever coming here. Sanji gave Roronoa a pointed look that clearly said explain that one, sword freak. Roronoa scowled. I remember that conversation, but I don't remember why we got into it. All I recall from that day is that one moment Chopper's telling us Nami's not sick anymore, the next we're discussing our ages for some reason. We all thought it was weird, but looking back, we just dismissed it and went on with our day. 2 days after that we arrived in Nanohana. Nami thought aloud. This doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense? The whole not remembering thing, Chopper asked. Didn't we think up the possibility that history's changed somehow? Sanji said, lightly chewing on his cigarette. Like we weren't supposed to come to this island but did anyway? That's what doesn't make sense, Nami started to clarify. The whole reason we had that stupid age debate was because we saw the island and Usopp started bragging about conquering haunted islands when he was 5. If Roronoa doesn't remember us ever seeing Kala, much less coming here, then I shouldn't remember ever having that conversation. Roronoa finished for her. You're right, I don't remember ever seeing her coming here. I shouldn't have memories of the discussion we had about our ages. So my theory was wrong, Chopper sighed. Sorry guys. That's okay, Chopper. It was a good theory, Nami assured him. She groaned. This is like one giant puzzle. I usually like puzzles, but this is getting ridiculous. It's okay, Nami. No one expects you or anyone else to figure it out all in one day, Sanji said. He exhaled some smoke. I think for now we should focus on one thing at a time, like Luffy. Who wants to bet he's covered more ground in the time it's taken us to have this little brainstorm session? For once, the cook is right. Roronoa agreed. I won't find Luffy before he finds one of those bounty hunter, higher-ups tattoos told me about. Chopper, can you still track his scent? Chopper sniffed the ground. Luffy's scent is still very fresh. I should be able to. The reindeer paused, a confused expression gracing his features. Chopper, Sanji said. What is it? Luffy's scent is not the only one here, the doctor answered. There's 2 others. One smells like spices. Yeah, spices. And roses. The other smells like gunpowder. He gasped. That's Usopp's scent. Usopp smells like spices and roses? Roronoa asked. He scoffed. Geez, you think you know a guy? Chopper shook his head. No, I meant the gunpowder smell is Usopp's. Usopp said he only went into the jungle when he heard Brook, but that was back near the Mary. Nami pointed out. Her eyes widened. Then that scent must belong to. That was when the trees began to topple over. Naturally, trees don't topple over at random. Unless they have sudden oak death. But these trees were not oaks. It appeared some glowing slice went through the air, cutting through the thick trunks just as neatly as any sword. While interesting to see, it did pose a problem for the Jungle Trek group. Because no matter how you look at, getting squished by a falling tree is a pretty stupid end for the future discoverer of all blue, world's greatest swordsman, maker of the world map, and creator of a panacea. As the first tree plummeted toward the group, Sanji jumped into the air and drove his foot into it, succeeding in kicking it away. Unfortunately, the effort caused a shooting pain to spread throughout his entire leg. He tried to bite back a groan of pain, but didn't do a good job in doing so. Oi, cook! Roronoa called up to him. You can't kick them all away, run. Normally, Sanji would have argued with the swordsman, but he decided now was not a good time. He proceeded to run as fast he could out of the path of the falling trees. Second to Chopper's pace. Dang, that reindeer could run. Luckily, while some of the trees fell quickly, others fell quite slowly. It wasn't until Sanji far enough away that he wouldn't be squashed did he notice Roronoa hadn't been running along with them. Sanji skidded to a halt. Where's Roronoa? Chopper also ceased running, looking frantically from side to side. It wasn't until he turned around did he shout, "There!" Sanji turned and groaned. Roronoa was still in the path of the falling trees. Only for some reason, he had all of his swords drawn, and seemed to have taken a battle stance. "What are you doing, algae brain?" Sanji shouted over to the swordsman. "Get out of there before you." 108 caliber Phoenix. Sanji's jaw dropped and his cigarette fell from his mouth. Roronoa merely slashed the air with his blades, but the motion created some sort of vacuum that practically glowed, not too unlike the slash that got them into this predicament. Though this single, curving slash cut through the falling trunks more neatly and efficiently than the previous one. The falling trees all broke into multiple pieces and fell to either side of the jungle, leaving a path that only covered Luffy's trail minimally. Roronoa scanned his work, then sheathed all three swords. "Alright, you can come back now." Sanji and Chopper both gaped. "Should it be physically possible to be that cool?" Chopper whispered. "I don't know, Chopper," was all Sanji could get out. "I don't know." The cook and reindeer slowly made their way back to Roronoa, who was examining the sliced-up trees critically. Sanji cleared his throat, regaining his composure. "So Mr. Fancy Swords, you were able to predict all my attacks back on the Mary and those cannonballs, so why didn't you see this coming?" "Sanji," Chopper gasped. Vivi wasn't there to scold him, so he would do it. "Because, Lord of the Swirls, that attack wasn't directed at me. It was random," Roronoa replied with just as much condescension. He turned to face the cook. "If the attacker doesn't know where his attack is going to end up, then I'm not going to know." "That actually makes sense," Sanji muttered. "You never make sense. Just what the heck happened to you in the last 2 years, Roronoa?" "You don't want to know. Moving on. We all agree it was a flying slash attack that cut through the trees, right?" "Yeah, it was kind of like what you did just now," Chopper agreed, reverting to Brainpoint and setting everyone's stuff on the ground. "Is that what it's called? A flying slash attack?" "Yeah, it's part of a skill set known as the powers of destruction," Roronoa replied. "But that slash didn't come from a sword. I would be able to tell if it did." Sanji's brain was still on the powers of destruction bit. Predicting attacks, cutting steel, chopping a galleon in half, and now flying slash attacks. If Zoro of all people progressed this much in just 2 years, what did that say for the rest of their crew? If it didn't come from a blade, where did it come from? Roronoa narrowed his eye, as if deep in thought. The man jumped up before balancing on his swords and kicking out both his legs. The motion created 2 glowing slashes, racing towards the green-haired swordsman. The latter quickly used 2 of his own swords to deflect the attack, sending the slashes into the door behind him. The first man got back to his feet. A second later, surrounding pillars and bookshelves collapsed, slashed neatly in 2. The first man, that square-nosed freak, smiled smugly. "Sorry, I use 4 swords." "It came from something I haven't seen in a long time," Roronoa said at last. "Which means this just got a whole lot more dangerous for you guys. We need to F of here." Sanji contemplated asking what he meant by that, but something in Roronoa's tone made the question die in his mind. "Right. Chopper, Nami Swan, let's." All 3 men froze. They knew they had been forgetting something. Guys," Sanji said. "Yes," Chopper and Roronoa answered. "Where's Nami Swan?" "Location. Jungles of Kala, away from Roronoa and the others." Nami didn't know why the trees had started falling, and she didn't care. All she had to know was that she wasn't going to let herself be flattened by an oversized piece of wood. She ran as fast as she could, trying to escape the descending timber. She didn't stop running until she could no longer hear the crashing booms of trees hitting the jungle floor. She came to a halt next to one of the giant tree roots, panting as she tried to catch her breath. "I think that's far enough, guys. Any idea why the trees started to guys?" She looked around. There were giant trees, vines, flowers, and few insects, but no Sanji, no Roronoa, and no Chopper. She was all alone. None of the surrounding scenery looked familiar. That way she had come was suddenly blocked by more trees that definitely had not been there before. Nami fell to her knees. Oh no, please don't tell me. Nami was lost. Nami, the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates, the mapmaker, and one of the only people on the freaking crew with any kind of sense of direction, was lost. No, I can't be lost. Nami shrieked. I'm the navigator, damn it. I'm not supposed to get lost, ever. But here she was. Completely lost, and she knew why. It's their fault, Nami hissed to herself. Zoro and Roronoa's. Zoro already has a terrible sense of direction, but with Roronoa here, that defect has been amplified and it rubbed off on me. Nami jumped to her feet, flames of vengeance flickering around her form. Those brainless swordsmen were going to pay for this. Just you wait, Roronoa Zoro. I'm going to increase your debt so much it'll take you 1,000 years to pay it all off. Nothing short of your firstborn child will satisfy me. Are you listening to me, Zoro? You are so? Geez, I feel sorry for the poor fool who earned your ire. Nami's rant became stuck in her throat at sound of the rich female voice. She looked over her shoulder. The speaker was standing across from her, leaning against one of the tree trunks and crossing her arms. She did not look happy. She was a curvy, athletic woman, very tall and looking to be 29 or 30. She wore a sleeveless vine and flower print cheongsam with long slits going down the sides, and loose pants tied off around the ankles underneath. She also wore white socks and black slippers, and her ears were pierced with simple silver hoops. On her right arm was a tattoo of a Jolly Roger, a skull with two curved arrow-headed swords behind it, resembling horns. And of course, her most striking feature was her long blonde mohawk. Some of the hair in the front fell onto her forehead, but the rest curved toward the back of her head and fell to just past her shoulders. Add the aforementioned description on top of the fact she had a pair of clawed metal gauntlets tied around her waist, and you got the appearance of someone who you did not want to mess with. Nami was no exception. The woman raised one manicured eyebrow. You do know talking to yourself is a sign of insanity, right? Like I don't have enough crazy people to deal with. Nami turned fully around to face the woman. Who are you? I don't suppose you've seen a long-nosed coward in goggles come by this way, have you? The woman asked, ignoring the question. Nami scowled, though on the inside she was freaking out. This had to be one of the bounty hunters. Depends. Why do you want to know? The woman ran a hand irritably through her mohawk. Because he's been nothing but a source of irritation and stress for me since we got to this stupid island. Do you have any idea how repetitive freeing your teammates from the clutches of giant Venus flytraps gets? Let me tell you, sister, it's not fun. Nami's sweat dropped. Wow, this lady could complain. I'm this close to catching him, though, she went on, and when I do, oh, there will be comeuppance. Nami cocked her head to one side. Comeuppance? Yeah, comeuppance. You know, revenge? Retribution? Nami stared at her. It's a word, the lady huffed. I believe you. Sorry, but I don't know where this long-nosed coward is. Maybe if Nami could make her think she wasn't one of the pirates she was hunting, she would leave and give the navigator time to locate Roronoa and the others. It was worth a shot. The lady smiled thinly. Oh, but I think you do. Cat burglar Nami. Nami groaned inwardly. Darn it. The woman smirked, crossing her arms. Now, if this were occurring to this actual manga or anime, now would be when an Oda box would appear. Here's one for your benefit. Gauntlet, Arati, second lieutenant of the Carrion bounty hunters. Arati pulled a wanted poster seemingly from nowhere. She held it up. My name's Arati, and I have to say, you look remarkably similar to how you did 2 years ago. Nami's eyes bugged out when she saw the poster. Cat burglar, Nami. Wanted dead or alive 16 million Barris. Why does my picture look like a pin-up photo from some dirty magazine? Nami thought in horror. Why'd I even have a bounty? What did I do to warrant such a high amount? Well, no matter, Arati continued, putting the poster away. I don't know how you got away from Runo, or how you managed to snap out of it, or why you thought cutting that pretty long hair would keep me from recognizing you. Personally, I don't really care. That hypno freak is a total moron, so I wouldn't put this form of incompetence past him. Point being, while you're not that annoying sniper, I do have a job to complete. I can forget about him for now and focus on other ventures. Nami remembered Rorinoa's condition. She was not to fight any of the bounty hunters without permission. The navigator turned heel and began to dart away from the mohawked woman. They always run, Arati sighed. Soru. Arati disappeared from where she was standing and reappeared in front of the ginger-haired girl. She was close enough that Nami could smell her rose-scented perfume. Nami skidded to a stop. What the? Arati smiled and rammed her knee into the navigator's gut. Nami choked out blood and went tumbling across the ground, finally stopping once she hit a tree trunk. Arati wasn't finished, however. She jumped into the air and kicked out her leg. Rankiaku. Nami frantically got to her feet, ignoring the protesting pain in her gut. She jumped away from the tree she had crashed into, and just in time too. Arati's kick created some sort of glowing slash, which cut through the tree like butter. It toppled over, and was about to crush the female bounty hunter. Geppo. Arati leapt into the air, and stayed there. Nami's eyes widened as she watched Arati kick her away through the air, easily avoiding the tree she knocked over. She can fly, Nami gasped. The navigator was so busy gaping she didn't notice that Arati was heading directly towards her. Geppo, Arati said. Soru. Arati stepped forward, once again appearing directly in front of Nami. The navigator, however, did snap out of it in time to quickly assemble her wooden bow staff. She swung towards the mohawked woman's head. Arati rolled her eyes. Tekai. The staff connected with Arati's head, and promptly snapped in half. Nami paled and broke out into a sweat, falling to her knees for the second time that day. Seriously, you're done already? Arati asked. She sounded disappointed as she slipped on one of her gauntlets. And here I was, looking forward to fighting Nami, the master of the art of weather, that my associates were raving about. Nami had nothing to say to that. She was still in shock. This woman had broken her bow staff, that weapon that had served her so reliably over the years, by not even moving. Was this what it meant to be a traveler of the new world? To be able to walk in the you cannot to be seen? To destroy trees just by kicking the air? This woman was nothing like the hunters on the beach. They'd put in an effort. Arati looked bored. She looked like how Rorinoa did when he beat Sanji. Okay, you know what? Forget it. I'm not wasting my time fighting someone weaker than me. Rorinoa had said that right before his curb stomping of Sanji. Arati clearly had no such issue. Truthfully, I have no real interest in capturing you, cat burglar, Arati admitted, slipping on her other gauntlet. But if I don't, my boss might start wondering what's up with me, and I do have a reputation to uphold. Nami swallowed the thick lump in her throat. She had to move. She had to move or this psycho was going to kill her. But she couldn't. Her legs weren't listening to her. Arati extended all of the fingers on her right hand, the sun glinting off the clawed gauntlet. Relax, girlie. I'm not going to kill you. That had put a huge drop in your bounty. Move, damn it, Nami scolded herself. Move, right now. Arati stepped forward and drew her arm back. Sorry, but this is going to hurt, go she. Green star. Skull bombgrass. Nami felt a cord wrap around her waist several times and yank her away from the female bounty hunter. A second later, the woman was enveloped in an explosion that left behind a pink mushroom cloud of smoke. Arati's screaming could be heard quite audibly. Nami watched the smoke cloud billow up towards the sky. If she hadn't been pulled away, she would have been caught up in that. But who? Ha! A male voice behind her gloated. Take that, you CP9 reject. That'll show you to mess with the sniper and navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates. Nami felt a hand grab her wrist. Up on your feet, Nami, the hand's owner ordered. That won't keep her down for long, trust me. Nami let herself be dragged into a run. She was too numb from shock to argue. As they ran, Nami kept looking over her shoulder, expecting to see Arati coming up behind, pissed as hell. So far, no sign of her. Glad you're alright, Nami, her rescuer was saying, shoving vines out of the way while he ran. I was worried about you, Sanji, and Chopper when I saw that feral whack job make off with the three of you. You had to tell me how you escaped. Nami's tongue felt like lead, she couldn't respond. But I had to ask, Why weren't you putting up a fight against Arati? He went on. I didn't go through the trouble of fine-tuning your clean attack just so you could not use it. It took a really long time, too. Seriously, what did you let those old fogies on Weatheria do to it? Nami had had enough. She stopped running and pulled her hand out of the man's grasp. This allowed her to finally get a good look at the person who saved her from Arati. He stopped running as well, lowering a pair of goggles from his eyes. Nami? You okay? That woman didn't hurt you, did she? Nami's stomach still ached from getting kneed and her mouth still held the metallic taste of blood, but that didn't concern her at the moment. She just stared at the man. He was a few inches taller than her, and at least a year older. He wore a pair of yellow rolled-up pants, red suspenders, and brown boots. He also wore a pair of orange and white striped goggles with red lenses, now hanging around his neck, orange headphones over his ears, a blue and white striped armband, and a white wide-brimmed hat. Over his shoulder was a red satchel, and in his hand was an oddly shaped black slingshot. He had black, extremely curly hair pulled back into a tight, puffy ponytail, and a small goatee on his chin. The man was also fairly muscular. Not super big muscles like Roranoa's, but still pretty well developed. However, it was the man's ridiculously long nose that announced his identity to Nami. Nami, he repeated. Usopp, she croaked. The man, Usopp, crossed his arms. Yeah? Oh, my lord. Nami stuttered out. She pointed at him. You're all manly. Why are you saying that like you're surprised? Usopp hollered back indignantly. He paused. Hey, did you get a haircut? He looked her up and down. And shorter? Well, Usopp. Nami said slowly. I may have a few things to fill you in on. Before she could begin what would be an extremely long explanation, they heard loud crashes coming from the direction they left Arati. Come on out and face me like a man, Sniper King. They could hear her scream, because when I'm done with you, you won't be one anymore. Ouch, Usopp whispered with a shiver. She recovered quicker than last time. He looked in his satchel. I'm almost out of pop greens, but I still have plenty of other ammunition left. I can still hold her off provided you lend a hand with your clean attack. But it's better we don't let her catch up. She's a hell of a person to shake off. If you know a way to fight her, I'd be more than happy to listen, Nami said. Just one question though. Yeah? What's a pop green, and what's a clean attack? Did you see the look on Vaughn's face back there? Runo snickered, jumping over a smaller giant tree root. Bet you he wasn't expecting to land brat watching duty. He volunteered afterwards, Arati pointed out. Whatever, that look was still epic. The mohawked woman crossed her arms. I still think you rigged that coin toss. You know cheating is frowned upon as most circles, right? Stop complaining. Nobody wants to hear it, Yari sighed, using her closed parasol as a walking stick. Besides, he did not cheat. He simply used a process of succeeding through alternative methods. Yeah, it's called cheating. Gamma Unit had the common sense to remain in the back of the hunting troop. It was better to leave the higher-ups to their bickering than get involved. Besides, they were planning to mutiny later anyway. Runo stuck his tongue out at her. You're a hypocrite. You're just as happy that you didn't get saddled with babysitting as the rest of us. Arati rolled her eyes and chose to walk ahead of the creepy duo, as she and Vaughn had dubbed them. She already had a headache from trying to figure how it had been day when they arrived, then night only an hour later, then day again. She didn't need another one from listening to those two freaks. Not to mention that continuing to engage in conversation with them would inevitably lead to her admitting to Runo he was right. Arati detested children. She wasn't paid enough for this kind of pain. It was in that moment Arati gained a strange feeling. It sent a crawl up her spine, and she didn't like it. She stopped walking to wait for it to pass, but it seemed like it wasn't doing that anytime soon. Hey guys, she spoke up. What? The creepy duo replied. Do you get the feeling we're being watched? You're just being paranoid, Runo scoffed, waving the concern off. Yari put her parasol in front of her brother, stopping him from walking forward. Hold that thought. I do feel something. Runo, help me listen. Runo nodded, not arguing for once, and joined Yari. They both closed their eyes, and Arati could tell they were stretching out their Kenbunshoku haki. The mohawked woman didn't really understand all the willpower stuff involved, but she'd been around the proverbial block enough times to know hockey was an extremely useful skill set. Arati scowled. She was way more responsible and willful than Yari and Runo, so why couldn't she awaken her own stupid hockey? She was the only, higher up, amongst the bounty hunters who couldn't use it. She had other talents to make up for it, but still, it was totally unfair. Arati crossed her arms. Well? Anything? The twins' eyes suddenly snapped open. Move. Yari began. 2 seconds too late, pop. Arati used Soru to move out of the way in time, but as fast she could tell, Yari, Runo, and several members of Gamma Unit weren't so lucky. After the popping sound there was a puff of pink smoke, and from the smoke came writhing green vines. However, it was what the vines were attached to that were the real threat. Where the hell did these come from? Arati hollered. Runo, Yari, and multiple members of Gamma Unit were now trapped with the maws of what appeared to be giant Venus fly traps. The attack had been so sudden, Yari had dropped her parasol, which had her sword hidden within it, and Runo was trapped in a position where he couldn't weasel his way out. Which was saying something, because Runo was exceptionally good at weaseling. Yari beat against the plant with her fist. Let go, you horticultural brute. Runo, help me. Runo was beating his plant with his fists, also having little success in freeing himself. Which was saying something, because both members of the creepy duo were inhumanly strong. I have my own complications to deal with right now. Arati, give us a hand. Right. Arati had debated telling Runo to try finding success through alternative methods, again. But now was not a time to be petty. She leapt forward and kicked out her leg. Rankyaku. The kick's air vacuum held the desired effect. It tore through the plants, and while they were not destroyed completely, it did make them drop their acquired morsels. The former captives made a break for it, running as far away as possible. Arati followed them at a slightly slower pace. Once they were a reasonable distance away, Yari and Runo dropped to the ground, panting and trying to catch their breaths. Where, in the name of sanity, did those come from? Yari gasped. I bet you it's the island messing with us. Kala is supposed to be an unnatural place, Runo theorized, jumping to his feet. He then helped Yari stand. I don't think so, Arati said, crossing her arms. There was a puff of smoke. I think something that was shot at you became those plants. Until we figure it out though, be on your guards. Who died and made you queen of the expedition? Runo said bitterly. Seeing as I'm the only one who didn't get almost eaten, Arati trailed off. Nobody likes a for lack of a better term wise ass, Arati, Yari said stiffly. And speaking of the whole almost getting eaten thing, about that. Arati broke into a grin. You ha 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 ha. You should have seen your faces, you ha 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 ha. The laughing fit lasted a good 10 minutes. Arati had had to put up with these two ever since they joined Carrion's crew 1 year ago, and the whole time they had acted so smug and superior. To see them reduced to such humiliating state was worth a few baleful glares from the creepy duo and whatever vengeance they planned for her later. Once she had calmed down, she ordered Gamma Unit to finish the plants off with the flamethrowers and made the eerie pair swear they would keep their senses alert so that nothing like this would happen again. Only it did happen again. The second time it happened, they caught sight of the Straw Hat's sniper, and thus begun what became an endless headache for Arati. Seriously, she wasn't paid enough for this. 2. Mary. Time. Night in the afternoon location. Aboard the Going Mary. Rorinoa peered over the edge of the crow's nest, and much to his expectations, his younger self had finally returned below deck. About time. Where did that brat get off assuming things like that? He had no idea what Rorinoa had to go through these last 2 years. He didn't know what his whole crew had to go through these last 2 years. And Rorinoa was going to keep it that way. It was going to be difficult, of course. He had the rest of his crew to worry about. Arg, why did Luffy have to make it a captain's order that he allow them to help? He didn't want to even think about what would happen if they got hurt. Luffy naturally never thought this kind of thing through, and Zoro had just been itching for a fight. You know, I don't remember ever being that naive, Rorinoa sighed aloud. Then again, it was probably that same mindset that led to what happened on Sabaody. No, now was not the time to think about that. He needed to think about something else. Or maybe just get some sleep. Who knew how long the night was going to last? Roronoa leaned back. There was not much room to do so. Geez, he'd forgotten how small the crow's nest was on the Going Merry. He had grown accustomed to the observatory, but still, sitting here made him feel nostalgic. Merry. Frowning, Roronoa quickly scaled down the rigging and planted his feet on the deck. The hard wooden planks felt strange under his boots, for he still expected to feel soft grass. It was all so different from what he had grown used to. "It's really been a long time, huh?" he whispered. Roronoa slowly made his way across the deck, coming to a stop when he reached the back of the Merry's figurehead. "Hey, Merry," he greeted. "It's been a while, for me at least. You seem to be doing well." No response. "Yeah, I guess it looks weird, talking to a ship. But you talked when we jumped off the bridge of hesitation, and again when we parted ways. So I figured maybe." The lamb's head was silent. Roronoa ran a hand through his hair. "Sorry, this was stupid. Franthing called a clowbotterman, and it won't show unless a ship is on her last legs. You're still in relatively good condition, despite that run-in with Laboon. That happened recently, right?" A warm wind blew. "So you won't be saying anything, at least not for a while." Roronoa sighed. "You're a good ship, Merry. Carry them for as long as you can, and after that, well, just know we'll be taken care of." Having said his piece, Roronoa sat down and leaned back against the base of Merry's figurehead. He closed his eye, and it wasn't long before he fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. In his sudden entrance into the world of sleep, he didn't notice a little figure standing in front of him, having materialized out of nowhere. It had the appearance of a small child, one wearing a white raincoat and holding a wooden hammer. "Don't worry, Zoro," the little thing said with a smile, placing one tiny hand on the swordsman's cheek. "I intended to do that anyway." 3. Job interview time. The year 1522 Alp, a couple months after the ringing of the ox bell. Location: Rusty Mug Tavern, Grove 3, Sabo de Archipelago. "You hear the news, H?" One drunkard sitting at the bar slurred. "The Navy's moving their HQ from Marineford to G1. "No kidding?" his slightly less drunk friend asked. "I'm not surprised. I heard Marineford got trashed pretty good during the war. Earth Quackish, Piratesh, and Admiralsh. Oh my, what the hell, I'm not complaining. While the Marines are away, guys like us get to play." "Here, here," another tavern-goer agreed. Several more cheers followed. Carrion rolled his eyes and took a sip of his rum. So, this was what he had been reduced to. Consorting with the furthest reaches of the justice system his world tried to keep. Bounty hunters were a despicable lot, but necessary in keeping the world order. He didn't have to be a genius to know they would profit from this new pirate era that infernal Newgate had begun. The old fool just had to get one more kick in before he died, didn't he? Declaring that the One Piece was real was like handing a loaded gun to every lowlife and criminal sailing the 5 seas. That was a lot of loaded guns. When facing such a threat, measures needed to be taken. He'd known what measure was needed, but... "Don't be preposterous, Carrion," Sengoku sighed tiredly. "I'm telling you, it's real," Carrion argued. He held out the book. "If we can claim the Star of Kala, we can end this ridiculous new era before it even starts." "It's already started, Carrion. Reports of heightened pirate activity have been flooding in from all 5 seas. We need to deal with that, not fund some fool's errand in tracking down a children's story. But, in any case, it's not my call to make. You'll have to take it up with my successor." "Successor? Yes," Sengoku responded. "I'm resigning from the Marines. I'm hoping Admiral Aokiji will take my place." "Oh, good," Carrion said. "I always respected Aokiji, even though I do think he is a lazy, perverted icemonger." "You just contradicted yourself again. Carrion, I know you've been searching for this island on the side for years, but you need to." "Fine then," Carrion interrupted. "If you don't believe in my mission, then I will simply gather followers in the Marines. If I can gather enough men willing to search for the treasure, you and your successor will have to agree." To make a long story short, no one he asked within the Navy went for it. Aokiji and Akainu were still duking it out on Punk Hazard, and several morally questionable occurrences that followed led him to where he was today. Luckily, Carrion was always a man to have a plan for every contingency, and this time was no different. Carrion got off his stool and walked to the front of the tavern. Excuse me, gentlemen. Every bounty hunter in the room stopped chattering, turning to stare at the man who had the gall to interrupt their merrymaking. If you would lend me your ears for a moment, I have a very lucrative offer I think many of you will be interested in hearing. Now he had their attention. Now, I will attempt to avoid sounding like some lunatic, Carrion continued. But I am searching for the lost treasure of the island of Kala. You just did the exact opposite of what you said you were going to do, several of the men scolded Carrion. One cloaked man sitting in the corner of the tavern, however, looked at Carrion with interest. I have a ship and the means to locate such a legend, but I need manpower. While searching for the island, we will hunt the bounties of pirates to fund not only our venture, but to line your own pockets as well. I have savings to pay any who join me quite handsomely. He smiled. Any takers? The tavern occupants stared at the former Marine for a long moment, before they all burst into hysterical laughter. What an idiot! One chortled. Kala. Ha! Who believes that old fairy tale? Another guffawed. Such a childish moron. No one would join that fool's escapade. I don't care what he's paying. We're bounty hunters, not treasure hunters. They kept laughing, and an angry blush spread across Carrion's face. Without another word, he stormed out the tavern, the laughs of the bounty hunters echoing after him. They're the fools, not me. He thought bitterly as he walked through the grove. When I find the treasure, no one will ever laugh at me ever again. I swear, when I find it all. You know, you move fast for an older guy. I could barely keep up. Carrion halted and turned his head to the side. Standing in an alley was a tall man in a dark cloak, the same one from the tavern. How he got ahead of the ex-marine was anyone's guess. They really had no right to laugh, the cloaked man went on. If the One Piece can exist, who says Kala can't as well? It's a big ocean, after all. What are you getting at, stranger? Carrion asked warily. A new era has begun, Rear Admiral Carrion. I was a simple bounty hunter in the old one. I'm willing to try something a bit different for the new one. The stranger removed his hood. He was a young man with cropped black hair with a lightning bolt shape shaved into the left side. He was extremely pale, and had a curved scar on his right cheek that stretched from his jaw to just under his eye. His eyes were a deep crimson tinted with brown, the color of partially dried blood. Allow me to introduce myself, the man said. My name is Enoch Vaughn. Enoch Vaughn? Carrion echoed. Yes, I've heard of you. You're that bounty hunter everyone has been calling Blood King. I knew you mostly operated on Sabaody Archipelago, but I didn't think I'd ever run into you. Mind explaining how you know who I am? Let's just say for now that I'm well versed in who's who within the Marines. Vaughn replied vaguely. Or those that used to be within the Marines. However, I digress. What I'm getting at is that I want to join you in your treasure hunt. To what end? Do I need to have an end? Maybe I'm just bored with the typical bounty hunter lifestyle. Or maybe you hope to find something on Kala just as much as I do. That's my business if I do, Vaughn said, waving the observation off. For the time being, you should just be happy someone of my representative even wants to come along on your little pleasure cruise. Once we start raking in some extra income from bounty hunting, we can hire grunts and thugs to join in, and maybe a couple more prestigious members. You can't pass a deal like this up. Carrion gave the young man a hard glare for a few seconds, before laughing. Durahuhuhuhu, alright Enoch, you have a deal. Welcome aboard. Vaughn smiled. Glad to hear it. By the way, I charge by the day. Figures. We'll work something out, and I take Tuesdays off. That's my me time. Fine, and I also, would you just come with me already? Alright, I'm coming. You don't need to have a coronary. Carrion sighed. He had a feeling he was in for the long haul. He could only hope it would be worth it in the end. 4. A short discussion in the Forbidden Garden. Time. Night in the afternoon. Location. Aboard the Going Merry. Arg. I'm exhausted. Nami groaned, flopping onto her bed. It's been such a long day already, and it's technically not even over yet. I don't blame you, Nami, Vivi yawned, sitting down in the desk chair. Karu curled up at her feet. If anything the future Mr. Bushido has told us is true, it's only going to get longer from here. I still can't believe we had to deal with all of this on top of everything else we're going through. Nami sighed. She sat up. Speaking of which, are you really okay with this, Vivi? Okay with what? As helping Roronoa find his crew. Of course I am. Why do you ask? Nami crossed her arms. The situation in Alabasta isn't getting any better, Vivi. We're still days away from arriving there, and this side trip hasn't helped matters either. I can't guarantee we'll make it in time to stop the rebellion. So I repeat, are you okay with this? Vivi bit her lip. Nami was right, of course. Alabasta was still waiting for her. Who knew how long finding the rest of Roronoa's crew would take? For all they knew, it could be days before they managed to track down every single one. Not to mention there were bounty hunters out there who could only further delay their progress. Still, Roronoa needed them, despite his protests. He'd sounded so worried before, calling the crew overconfident rookies. If he wanted them safe so badly, wouldn't it be better if they stuck with him? You guys are all risking your journey and going out of your way to help me get home, Vivi said at last. Actually, Alabasta is on our way, Nami began. That's not the point. You all, Zoro included, don't really have any reason to help me. Zoro is Zoro, past or future. If Roronoa needs to find his nakama, then I'm going to help him. After all, his nakama are future versions of all of you. You sure? I'm positive. Alabasta isn't going anywhere. Nami sighed. I guess it's hard to argue with that kind of resolve. Okay, I just needed to be sure. Vivi smiled. I appreciate your concern, though. Thank you, Nami. Hey, what are friends for? Now, get some sleep. I have a feeling we're going to need it. Nami got under her covers and shut off the light, but Vivi remained in her chair, replaying Nami's words over and over in her mind. What were friends for? Well, typical friends didn't usually promise to beat up warlords and stop rebellions. Then again, the Straw Hats were not so typical in any aspect. 5. Arrival at the Mystery Island. Future Redux time, the year 1524 AOP. Location. Somewhere in the New World, between Dock Island and Punk Hazard. Nami, don't you dare try to leave yet, Chopper scolded, holding up a stethoscope threateningly. And given he was in heavy point, it really did look threatening. I'm not finished examining you yet. Chopper, I said I'm fine, Nami insisted, getting up from the examination table. You worry too much. No, I worry the perfect amount, Chopper argued. I don't know what kind of side effects Ain's powers had on us. We grew younger, then older. The fact the latter happened without any nutrition or vitamins to stimulate the growth could mean. Chopper, that was days ago. If you, me, Robin, and Brooke haven't keeled over by now, I doubt anything bad is going to happen. Nami gave the doctor a smile. After all, we have the best doctor on the Grand Line with us, don't we? Chopper blushed, shrinking back down into brain point and wiggling joyfully. Shut up, you jerk. I don't need you complimenting me, so keep your praise to yourself, you damn woman. It doesn't make me happy or anything to hear you say that. I might actually believe you if you didn't look so darn happy while saying that, Nami thought with a sweat drop. She smiled wistfully. And yet, I'm glad to see that much hasn't changed about him. Pulling her long orange hair into a ponytail, Nami exited the infirmary with a nagging Chopper in tow. The crew had left Dock Island, and all the neo-marine craziness that went with it, behind about little less than 2 days ago. As for where they were going next, well, Nami wasn't quite used to the new log pose yet, but Luffy insisted upon following the needle that was wobbling the most. According to the Minister of the Left, the more the needle wobbled, the more dangerous the island it was pointing to was. Typical Luffy. Nami sighed as she stepped onto the deck. At the moment, Usopp was tending to his garden. Robin was in her deck chair reading. Brooke was sitting against the foremast while strumming his guitar. Zoro was asleep against the railing. And Luffy was fishing next to Zoro. Sanji was in the galley preparing breakfast, and Frankie was down in the soldier docks doing who knew what. So basically, it was a normal day for the Straw Hat crew. Or about as normal as it could get in the New World. Guys, can someone please tell Chopper there won't be negative side effects to being de-aged and re-aged? Nami asked. If something was going to happen, it would have by now. Well, I've certainly been feeling fine, Robin spoke up, placing a bookmark in her book. She turned her head towards the musician. What about you, Brooke? I've been suffering no ill side effects either, Robin-san. Although, I have been having a sick feeling in my stomach. Brooke replied. Oh, but wait, I have no stomach, so I guess I'm alright. Yo ho 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 ho. To emphasize his skull joke, he struck a few jolly chords on his fish guitar. Robin turned back to Chopper and Nami. And I'll assume you've been feeling well too, Chopper? Chopper frowned. Yeah, I have. Okay, fine, I'll stop nagging. But I'm keeping a close eye on all of you and myself for the next week just to be sure. If it'll satisfy your concerns, Dr. Chopper. Don't think calling me a doctor will make happy, idiot. Because it doesn't. Robin gave the little reindeer a smile and returned to her book. Nami just rolled her eyes, but also with a smile. Brooke continued to strum, and Zoro was still asleep. Nami, Luffy called out in a whiny tone. He bounced his fishing pole up and down. How much longer till we reach land? I'm boo red. Considering we just escaped the imminent destruction of the New World a couple days ago, I think a little boring is warranted. Nami snapped at him. Boring is never warranted, Luffy declared. What does warranted mean? It means called for, Captain. Thanks, Robin. Nonetheless, Nami continued. If we could have a chance for a little peace, I would accept it as it comes. Actually, Usopp spoke up from his garden. Luffy might be getting his wish. Nami frowned and ran up the deck stairs to where Usopp kept his garden. The sniper had his spyglass trained towards the waters behind the Sunny. What is it? Nami asked. Usopp handed her the spyglass. When the navigator peered through it, she saw the form of a large galleon ship with a snarling ape figurehead. It's not Navy, so at least we know Kizaru didn't follow us from Periodo, Usopp reported, albeit with some relief. Nami didn't blame him. The last time they faced Kizaru, well, no one was too eager to repeat the experience anytime soon. Probably not even Luffy. Do we know if it's hostile? Nami asked. As soon as she said this, the water to the port side of the ship exploded, dousing Luffy and Zoro in seawater. Luffy was sent sputtering across the lawn, spitting out water. Zoro, however, remained blissfully asleep. I'm gonna say, yes, Usopp squeaked. More explosions ensued. The 1000th Sunny was officially being fired upon. Nami ran down the steps, followed by Usopp, and began barking out orders. Usopp, run down below and tell Frankie his ship's being fired upon. Chopper, go get Sanji out of the galley. Luffy, deflect those cannonballs. Zoro. She stomped over to the swordsman and bonked him on the noggin. Wake up. Zoro snapped awake. Ow, damn it, woman, what was why am I all wet? Stop asking questions and starting chopping cannonballs. Sunny's made of atom wood, but we're not taking any chances after what happened. Zoro nodded and ran over to the backside railing, swords drawn and slicing any cannonballs that got too close. While all this was occurring, Sanji emerged from the galley with Chopper, the former immediately declaring he was at Nami's service and aiding in knocking away cannonballs. His skywalk allowed access to the higher aimed ones. Chopper changed into Heavy Point and, followed by Brooke, climbed the rigging to tie up the sails for a coup de burst. Luffy ran to the stern of the Sunny and picked up the dropped spyglass, peering through it towards the attacking ship. Hey, they're pirates, Luffy announced. They have a Jolly Roger. Anyone we know? Nami hollered from the helm. Luffy shook his head. I don't think so, he grinned. Our first New World pirate crew fight. This is going to be so much fun, and they have a pretty cool flag. It's a pistol shooting a skull. The spyglass was suddenly pulled from the rubberman's grip, and when he turned to protest, he saw a row of Bloom hands passing it along the railing over to Robin. Robin, I was looking through that. What gives? Luffy shouted. Robin looked through the spyglass and frowned. I recognize that flag, Captain. That's not a pirate ship. It's not. Robin collapsed the spyglass. No, that ship belongs to the Carrion bounty hunters. Luffy wrinkled his nose. Who names their crew after rotting meat? Robin raised an eyebrow. How do you know what a carrion is? I know everything about meat. Of course you do. Robin gained a contemplative expression. I've only heard of this group in passing, but they're supposed to be very good at what they do. Her brow furrowed. But if this is the carrion hunter's ship, then that means. Oh, he's bold. Robin, who are you talking about? Luffy inquired. Something I should know? Robin shook her head. It's nothing, Luffy. For now, you should worry about deciding our next course of action, fight or flight. Luffy nodding, trusting his nakama. He jumped down to the deck, where those who weren't deflecting cannon fire were gathered, awaiting orders. "Well, Luffy," Chopper said, "what are we going to do?" "Oi, Luffy bro," Frankie's voice came over the intercom. "Usopp and I have a coup de burst super ready to go. All we need now is your okay," Usopp's voice added. The crew looked at their captain expectantly. Luffy nodded. "Yosh, I have decided, we're staying to fight." The assembled pirates fell over. "Why?" Nami yelled. "Robin says that ship belongs to the Carrion bounty hunters. I refuse to let people who let perfectly good meat rot go unpunished." "That's not a good reason." Zoro glanced over his shoulder at his captain. This was completely reckless. Normally, he was okay with Luffy's eagerness, but this was the new world. The only reason he wasn't protesting Luffy's decision was because it was an order. He could scold Luffy if this recklessness became a greater issue later on. "If that is your decision, I'm with you all the way, Luffy-san," Brook heartily agreed. "Hold it," Sanji broke in, calling down from where he stood on top of the observatory. "Did you say they were called the Carrion Bounty Hunters?" Luffy nodded. "That name sounds kind of familiar," Chopper said. "I was about to say the same thing," Nami agreed. "Ditto," Sanji added. Robin joined them on deck. "They are relatively well known. I heard their leader is a former Navy Rear Admiral." "That highly ranked?" Brook gasped. "Really? Cool," Luffy said. She. I wonder if he knows Kobe and Smokey." "Just because he's an ex-Marine doesn't mean he automatically knows other Marines," Nami shouted. "They're bringing something else out," Zoro hollered, interrupting. "I think they keep mortars in the mouth of their figurehead." Aboard the Silverback, ship of the Carrion Bounty Hunters. "The Straw Hats ship is within range, Boss Carrion," the red-eyed man stated. "Orders?" "Fire the hooks," Carrion commanded. Then reel them in. The ship was close enough that the Straw Hats could see its figurehead clearly, and sure enough, the ends of two large cannons were poking out of the ape's maw. The mortars fired, and Cook, Swordsman, and Captain all prepared to deflect whatever ammunition was coming their way. However, instead of the explosive projectiles mortars are usually known for firing, two large grappling hooks were fired, approaching the Thousand Sunny rapidly. "They're trying to latch onto us," Robin shouted. "And I wouldn't be surprised if those hooks were retractable." "They're going to reel us in?" Chopper squealed. "Like fish on a line. Hopefully, we won't be gutted and eaten afterwards." "Don't say stuff like that so casually, Robin." Luffy was the first to react. He ran past his crewmates and began rapidly climbing up the foremast. About halfway up, he launched himself off the wooden structure, not unlike a rubber ball bouncing off a wall, putting himself directly in the path of the hooks. "Luffy, what are you?" Zoro began to say when Luffy passed over him. If Luffy's goal was to intercept the hooks, he achieved it. Sort of, anyway. The actual hooks ended up passing Luffy, but the rubber captain was able to wrap his arms around the giant chains they were attached to. Luffy landed on top of the structure where the bath and library were kept, managing to keep his grip on the chains. Luffy grit his teeth, his face beaded with sweat. Then with one mighty heave, the chains snapped from the enemy's figurehead, the broken ends flying towards the Sunny and falling uselessly into the water. Aboard the Silverback, Carrion stared slack-jawed at the broken chains. Straw Hat broke his grappling hooks. That idiot pirate broke his grappling hooks. He was not going to get upset over this. He was going to take this maturely, calmly, and... That filthy piece of pirate S. Vaughn stared calmly at his boss's outburst. He'd been having those frequently as of late. Sometimes the red-eyed man wondered whatever happened to the calculating, cool character he joined up with 2 years ago. All the stress of failure was clearly getting to him. The fact that was the third time that month those hooks broke probably didn't help either. Vaughn sighed and rolled his eyes. "I'll get the replacement hooks, again." Luffy let out a deep breath he hadn't been aware he'd been holding, and tossed the remains of the hooks overboard. "No way I'm letting some rotten meat crew get its hooks into my ship. Sunny doesn't deserve that." With that, he jumped from the bathroom library structure and rejoined the crewmates assembled on deck. "What an impressive feat of strength, Luffy-san," Brook praised his captain. "My muscles would have torn if I tried the same thing." "Oh, but I have no muscles, yo-ho-ho-ho." "Now's not the time, Brook," Nami snapped. Luffy's bought us some time, but the hunters are still firing cannonballs, and they're still getting closer. We need to. Hey, Nami? Zoro spoke up, cutting another cannonball in half. For the love of what? You said we're not supposed to be reaching land for several more days, right? Yeah, that's right, the navigator replied. Why do you ask? Zoro pointed to the right. Then what's that big island-shaped blotch in the distance off the port side? Nami's eyes widened, and she immediately ran for the port side of the Sunny, grabbing the spyglass Robin held out as she ran past her. Once there, she peered through the little telescope and sure enough, there was an island-shaped blotch in the distance. With it, of course, she could see that it was more than just a blotch, but an actual island covered in fog. That island wasn't there before, Nami stammered. She glanced down at her log pose. None of the log pose needles are pointing to it. How? All of a sudden, the ship took a deep lurch. Most of the assembled pirates lost their balance and fell over. Sanji was forced to jump down to the deck, where he and Heavy Point Chopper both ran for the rapidly spinning helm. What just happened? Luffy shouted. I think the ship's turned. Robe up and allowing several flower arms help the others off the lawn. It has, Zoro said, joining them. We're heading directly toward that island now. Cannon fires stopped, by the way, and the bounty hunter ship is gone. Don't ask me where it went. Brook looked over the side, and pointed to the large waves formed by the Sunny. We've also picked up speed. Crap, we've gotten caught in a current. Sanji, Chopper, Nami barked out. Turn us 90 degrees, now. We're trying, Nami, Sanji grunted. The helm won't budge, we're stuck. Nami paled. That was when Frankie came up on the deck through the trapdoor that led to the docks. Anybody else feel Sunny lurch just now? The cyborg asked, helping Usopp up through the trapdoor. After the hooks and the cannonballs, the ship tilting was what finally got your attention, Zoro asked incredulously. Nami shushed him and quickly brought Frankie and Usopp up to speed. So we're heading towards a foggy island that appeared out of nowhere? Usopp summarized. He formed an X with his arms. Nah, no way, I'm not going. I don't think you have much of a choice, Longnose, Sanji grunted, giving up the helm. Chopper kept at it, though. You don't have to be a scaredy cat about it. Besides, it might be fun, Luffy added cheerfully. I'm just being realistic, Usopp said. Remember the last time we went to a foggy island that appeared out of nowhere? To emphasize his point, the sniper gestured to Brook and Zoro. Why am I a negative example? Brook asked. Usopp wisely did not answer, nor did anyone make a move to elaborate. It's a mystery island, Luffy declared. Since the bounty hunters are gone, we should go explore it. Forget it, Luffy. The sniper went on. We don't know what's on that island. It's unnatural. For all we know it could be haunted. This statement made the crew pause, save for Frankie, Robin, and Brook. The ones who paused were now all gaining similar expressions of puzzlement. Guys, is something wrong? Frankie asked. You all got super quiet just now? Anybody else getting a weird sense of déjà vu? Sanji asked. Déjà vu? Luffy asked. No, déjà vu, Chopper corrected. It's mean it feels like you've done something before. Something about this situation feels oddly familiar, but I can't put my finger on it, Nami muttered. So we've already been to this mystery island? Luffy asked. He stuck out his lip. Then that's boring. I don't want to go anymore. I doubt we've been here before, Luffy, Zoro said. I think we'd remember visiting an island that appeared out of thin air, and being dragged there by some weird current. This made the Rubberman considerably happier. We're getting closer to the fog, Usopp announced fearfully. Luffy nodded, then ran over to the Sunny's figurehead. Sanji, Nami, and Chopper had all said the ship couldn't leave the current anyway, so they might as well make the most of it. Set the sails, Luffy ordered, throwing his arms up into the air. We're going to the mystery island. As if responding to the captain's command, the fog swallowed up the ship, making it vanish. It was as if it had never been there in the first place. Meanwhile, the little girl abruptly looked up from where she was digging on the beach. A cold shiver ran down her spine, and she looked out towards the fog, which always hung around the furthest border of the island's waters. She could hear multiple voices within its expanses. Visitors are coming, she whispered, mostly to herself. So, Kala had revealed itself yet again. In just a week, possibly, time was hard to gauge on Kala, after her friend and his crew had left. This was the quickest it had ever happened. She usually went months between visitors. This time was different, however. She could feel it in her bones. This was only beginning of a much larger event. Siobhan stood up, dusted off her clothes, and grinned. Yosh. Let's get started.